Good afternoon. I am Denise O'Donnell, and as the Director of the Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance, it is my pleasure to welcome you here today to celebrate the launch of the Intellectual Property Theft Public Education Campaign. I would like to extend a sincere thank you to all of you who represent our partners at the federal, state, and local levels, as well as in the industry, nonprofit, and media sectors. This campaign would not have happened without your collaboration, and we are very excited to unveil it today. At the federal level, we are collaborating in unprecedented ways to confront intellectual property theft and to put the administration's strategy into action. This coordinated approach is evidenced by the panel of distinguished speakers joining me here today on the stage this afternoon. U.S. Attorney General Eric H. Holder, Jr., U.S. Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator Victoria A. Espinel, Acting Deputy Secretary of Commerce and Undersecretary for Economic Affairs Rebecca M. Blank, Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement John Morton, and National Crime Prevention Council President and CEO Ann Harkins. When we talk about intellectual property theft, many people do not know what that term actually means or why intellectual property theft is so important, or intellectual property is so important to the economic and public health of this nation. We want to change that. The public education campaign we are unveiling for the first time today was born from an urgent need to raise awareness of the true harm caused by theft of intellectual property. One important way of combating intellectual property theft is through enhanced enforcement. The Bureau of Justice Assistance launched the Intellectual Property Enforcement Grant Program in 2009 to address intellectual property theft through increased prosecution, prevention, training, and technical assistance. Since 2009, BJA has awarded nearly $11 million to support intellectual property enforcement efforts and to establish intellectual property task forces throughout the country. These funds have led to a dramatic increase in enforcement activity around intellectual property crimes. For example, in the first year of the grant program, the Los Angeles Police Department experienced a nearly 200% increase in intellectual property theft arrests over the prior year. However, law enforcement cannot solve this problem without the public's help and support. The campaign we will release today is another crucial piece of this strategy. This campaign would not have been successful without the contributions of so many of you in this room. I want to particularly recognize Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who will be joining us soon, Representative Adam Schiff, and Representative John Conyers for their support. I would also like to recognize Assistant Attorney General Lori Robinson and Criminal Division Chief Andrea Sharon for their leadership in this area. Our first speaker today has been a vigilant advocate throughout his career for the protection of American intellectual property and the millions of jobs and lives that depend on it. Attorney General Eric Holder was sworn to his post on February 2nd, 2009 by Vice President Biden. Throughout his tenure at the Department of Justice, both as Deputy Attorney General under President Clinton and now as Attorney General under President Obama, he has unequivocally supported intellectual property rights enforcement as a department priority, culminating in his formation of the DOJ Task Force on Intellectual Property in February 2010. Attorney General Holder's emphasis on the importance of effective partnerships on this and other criminal justice issues enabled BJA to seek input and guidance from all corners of government and industry on the content of this educational campaign. It is my pleasure to introduce Attorney General Eric Holder.
Good afternoon. And thank you, Denise, for your kind words and for your outstanding leadership of the Bureau of Justice Assistance and for your commitment and your frontline efforts to protect the rights, safety, and best interests of American consumers, innovators, and entrepreneurs as well. Now, this is critical and increasingly complex work, and it has become a priority, not only for the United States Department of Justice, but for our colleagues across the administration, our law enforcement and industry partners, and of course for President Obama himself. His commitment to preventing and to combating intellectual property theft is clear, and it is perhaps most evident in his support for the groundbreaking work being done by the White House Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator, my friend Victoria Espinel, and her team. So it's fitting, I think, that we've gathered here at the White House to launch a new cutting-edge campaign to raise awareness about the threat and the impact of IP crimes. And I want to thank Victoria, as well as ICE Director John Morton, Acting Deputy Secretary of Commerce Rebecca Blank, and Ann Harkins, an old friend and the President and CEO of the National Crime Prevention Council, for lending their voices and their expertise to this important public education effort, and for helping to bring so many essential partners into this work. I'm pleased to see that several of these key partners are here with us today, including my colleagues Tony West, the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Division, and Lori Robinson, the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs. And I'm proud to stand with you all as we begin a new chapter in our nation's fight against intellectual property crimes. Now, as our country continues to recover from once-in-a-generation economic challenges, the need to safeguard intellectual property rights and to protect Americans from IP crimes has really never been more urgent. But in many ways, this work has never also been more difficult. Recent technological advances, particularly in methods of manufacturing and distribution, have created new opportunities for businesses of all sizes to innovate and to grow. But these quantum leaps have also created new vulnerabilities, which tech-savvy criminals are eager to exploit. As a result, we are seeing alarming rises in IP crimes, illegal activities that can not only devastate individual lives and legitimate businesses, but undermine our nation's financial stability and prosperity. Make no mistake, IP crimes are anything but victimless. For far too long, the sale of counterfeit, defective, and dangerous goods has been perceived as business as usual. But these and other IP crimes can destroy jobs, suppress innovation, and ultimately jeopardize the health and the safety of consumers. In some cases, these activities are used to fund dangerous and even violent criminal enterprises and organized crime networks. And they present a significant and growing threat to our nation's economic and national security. But we are fighting back in bold, comprehensive, and collaborative ways. In fact, just yesterday, on what's known as Cyber Monday, and which is billed as the busiest online shopping day of the year, leaders from the Justice Department, the FBI, ICE, and our U.S. attorney community announced the results of our latest effort to disrupt the online sale of counterfeit goods. As part of a long-running law enforcement operation known as in our sites, we seized 150 domain names of websites engaged in the illegal sale and distribution of counterfeit goods and copyrighted works. To date, our joint enforcement activities have shut down 350 websites, and our vigilance in stopping the illegal sale of these goods will continue. Through these and many other efforts, it's been an honor to build on the work that I was able to begin more than a decade ago when in 1999, during my tenure as Deputy Attorney General, I helped to launch the department's first intellectual property initiative. Over the last 12 years, this effort has evolved into what is now a very wide-ranging IP criminal enforcement program. And today, thanks to the hard work of key leaders, investigators, and law enforcement officials at every level, including many of the people in this room, I'm pleased to report that this work has never been more aggressive, more strategic, or more effective. We have devoted more resources than ever before to identifying and defeating IP criminals. We're seeking new ways to share information and to leverage expertise with a variety of private sector partners, as well as government and law enforcement officials across the country. And we're using every tool and resource at our disposal to help secure our nation's economic well-being and to protect the safety and the interests of American consumers. Now, under the Obama administration, these efforts have led to a number of significant steps forward, from the development and implementation of the government-wide Joint Strategic Plan that was released last summer, to the formation of a Justice Department task force on intellectual property, which is being led by the Deputy Attorney General Jim Cole, to important international partnerships and joint initiatives that have helped us to train or to educate more than 2,500 foreign judges, prosecutors, investigators, and other officials from more than 30 countries on IP protection. Along with the strategies put in place by the department within the Civil Division's Consumer Protection Branch and the Criminal Division's Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section, and with the success of our ongoing law enforcement actions, I believe that we are heading in the right direction. But our efforts at the federal level are only part of the answer, and frankly, just a small part. The work that state and local law enforcement agencies do to uncover and to address IP crimes is essential. And ultimately, the responsibility for protecting citizens and consumers rests largely with them. Of course, the Justice Department will continue to make every possible effort to support their work. In fact, as Denise just mentioned, over the last 2 years, our Office of Justice Programs has awarded nearly $11 million to help states and local jurisdictions fight intellectual property theft and to provide training to investigators, prosecutors, as well as advocates. Now, despite these critical investments, it's clear that government won't be able to win this fight and to keep pace with today's criminals alone. Our efforts will always depend not only on law enforcement activity and industry partnerships, but also on robust public engagement and the vigilance of the American people. And that's why this new campaign is all about. Now, in just a few moments, we'll be unveiling a series of television, radio, and internet messages designed to help get the word out about the dangers of buying counterfeit goods and the seriousness of intellectual property theft. Now, these public service announcements will raise awareness about the ways in which members of the public can help us more effectively prevent and combat these crimes, protect potential individuals, and bring criminals to justice. And with holiday shopping season now upon us, this information could hardly be hitting the airwaves at a more appropriate time. So I'd like to take this opportunity to remind consumers to exercise caution when looking for bargains and discounts on the internet. And to put it simply, if the deal seems too good to be true, it probably is. Fortunately, we can all be part of the solution. Anyone who suspects an IP crime can visit cybercrime.gov, FBI.gov, or IPRcenter.gov to report suspected offenses. The public's proactive attention to these issues can help us to disrupt the sale of illegal goods, to prosecute the individuals, gangs, and international criminal organizations that profit from these activities, and to stop those who would exploit the ingenuity of others for monetary gain. Of course, despite our best efforts, I realize that the progress that we seek will not be easy, and that we may not be able to achieve the necessary results as quickly as we might like. But if we keep working together in partnership with industry leaders, law enforcement officials, IP crime victims, and members of the public, and if we continue to shine a light on the threat and the impact of intellectual property theft, I have full confidence in our ability to bring those who violate intellectual property laws to justice and to protect the rights and best interests of the citizens that we are all privileged to serve. So once again, I'd like to thank today's speakers and their colleagues for the critical work that they are leading and for the opportunity to join them here this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Victoria Espinel was nominated by President Obama to be the first U.S. Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator and confirmed by the Senate in December 2009. As she is a former professor of intellectual property and international trade law at George Mason University, it is no surprise that she is a fervent believer in providing education on this important issue. She has advised numerous House and Senate committees on intellectual property issues and was the first Assistant United States Trade Representative for Intellectual Property and Innovation at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. She has been a constant collaborator and supporter of the Intellectual Property Theft Public Education Campaign. Ms. Espinel?
Thank you, Denise. Welcome to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today for the launch of this public awareness campaign. I want to thank Attorney General Holder for his partnership and his leadership in combating intellectual property crime and ensuring that it will never be and is no longer business as usual. The Department of Justice works closely with the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, and I want to acknowledge Director John Morton for his strong commitment to enforcement of intellectual property, including the excellent work that is done at the IPR Center. I also want to thank Acting Deputy Secretary Rebecca Blank for the work that Commerce does every day to support intellectual property, and of course to Ann Harkins for putting together this wonderful campaign. I am so pleased that Senator Whitehouse and Representatives Conyer and Schiff were able to be here today, and I commend you for the leadership and the dedication that you have shown to intellectual property enforcement. The protection of U.S. intellectual property rights is a truly bipartisan issue, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to strengthen protection of U.S. intellectual property rights. As the Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator, it is my job to make sure our intellectual property laws are working properly and that they're enforced. Counterfeit medicines, electronics, software, content, consumer products, they hurt our businesses, hurt our workers, hurt our economy. They pose a serious risk to health and safety, and intellectual property crime is used as a source of revenue by criminals who seek to do harm through organized crime and terrorist activities that are paid for by the sale of counterfeit and pirated goods. Recent cases have underscored the dangers that counterfeits pose to the public, and this administration is committed to aggressively combating them. In June, a defendant was sentenced to 87 months in prison for trafficking in fake weight loss drugs that caused a stroke. In April, a Chinese national was sentenced to 33 months in prison for selling counterfeit pills that contained a substance used to make sheetrock. And in October, many different parts of the U.S. government, including ICE, the Department of Defense, including the Naval Criminal Investigative Services, the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Post Office, Customs, and the U.S. Attorney's Office right here in D.C. worked together and won a victory against criminals attempting to sell dangerous fake electronics to our military. Last month, in this case, Ms. McCloskey was successfully prosecuted and sentenced for her role in a scheme involving nearly $15 million worth of counterfeit integrated circuits that were sold to the U.S. Navy and to defense contractors. These are devices that control the flow of electricity to computer parts in vital systems. In July, as part of the administration's transnational organized crime strategy, President Obama issued an executive order that designated the Camorra crime family, which is based in Italy, as a transnational organized crime organization. The Camorra operates a prolific criminal enterprise that earns more than 10% of its $25 billion annual profits through the sale of counterfeit and pirated items such as luxury clothing, power tools, CDs, DVDs, and software. We are a knowledge-based economy. To grow our economy, to support jobs in our communities, to find solutions to our challenges, and to protect our consumers, we must have intellectual property laws that work well and are effectively enforced. As President Obama has said, we are going to aggressively protect our intellectual property. Our single greatest asset is the innovation and the ingenuity and creativity of the American people. It is essential to our prosperity and will only become more so in the future. My job is much easier because of the unwavering support of President Obama and Vice President Biden on intellectual property. This administration strongly believes in the importance of fighting to protect intellectual property because President Obama knows that winning that fight means winning the future by guarding the innovation that drives our nation's economy. And indeed, intellectual property is not only an engine of economic growth and of jobs, it is what we as a country do best. Now, more than ever, as we work to rebuild our economy and increase exports, it is critical. It goes right to the heart of what this country needs now: good jobs for hardworking Americans and the ability to build for our future. We have to protect what we create, and we cannot let others unfairly take and profit from our innovation and our creativities, or we put our existing jobs and our competitive future at risk. Our intellectual property enforcement strategy must support our artists and our innovators. It must increase our global competitiveness, and it must help to create jobs. Since I started this job, my office has conducted an in-depth review of our laws and our policies and issued an administration strategy to strengthen intellectual property enforcement. Based upon that review, we formulated core operating principles through which the U.S. government can more effectively increase the enforcement of intellectual property. These principles include overall efficiency, in other words, to work efficiently within the government to maximize our resources, in particular our law enforcement resources, and increase our enforcement activities. Legislative reform to ensure that our laws are up to date and that they are effective to combat the ever-evolving tactics of counterfeits and pirates. Law enforcement to increase law enforcement investigation and prosecution of offenders. Voluntary initiatives to engage the private sector and create voluntary solutions and best practices to reduce infringement. And public awareness to inform the public about the impact that intellectual property crime has on our economy and the health and safety of our consumers. It is extremely important that we make sure the public is aware of the negative effect that intellectual property crime has on our economy, on job creation, and the dangers that counterfeits pose to health and safety of consumers. That is why we are here today. And again, I want to thank Attorney General Holder, Acting Deputy Secretary Blank, Director Morton, and Senator Whitehouse and Representative Conyers and Schiff for their unwavering support. Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed today's presentation.
Rebecca Blank is the Acting Deputy Secretary of Commerce, a role she was first appointed in November 2010. From August 2011 through October 2011, Dr. Blank served as the Acting Secretary of Commerce. Now, as Acting Deputy Secretary, she is focused on matters of management and policy for the department's 12 bureaus, functioning as Commerce's Chief Operating Officer. Dr. Blank has held many prestigious positions in government and academia, including as Dean of the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan and a member of President Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. Her career tells the story of her commitment to the continued economic prosperity of the American people, in which intellectual property plays such a key role. Acting Deputy Secretary Blank.
Thank you very much, Denise, and thank you, Attorney General Holder, for inviting me to be part of this event. And I do want to thank Ann Harkins and the National Crime Prevention Council for their leadership on this critical issue. I spend a lot of time talking to businesses, small businesses, large businesses, businesses in all sorts of industries. And when I ask them what their challenges are out there in the marketplace, again and again, they come back to the issue of intellectual property theft. As you've heard today, counterfeit goods can not only cause harm to the safety of our families, but they also cause harm to our economy and to American businesses. That's because the success of the U.S. economy relies heavily on intellectual property. Virtually every industry either produces IP or uses IP. IP theft costs domestic industries an estimated $200 to $250 billion a year. This robs American workers of hundreds of thousands of jobs. It's not a secret that in order to retain our role as one of the strongest and most successful economies in the global marketplace, American businesses must constantly innovate. Our businesses grow and thrive when they are able over time to produce new products or better products, or when they figure out a way to produce the same good at a lower cost or in a more sustainable way. And the only way to assure that businesses have the incentives and the motivation for this type of ongoing innovation is by protecting their ideas and their intellectual property. We're here today to talk about educating consumers, and my message to consumers is simple. Only when American ideas and American inventions are protected, so that innovators can receive the rewards from their creativity, then can American businesses prosper and the American economy continue to grow. It's also important to remember that protecting intellectual property has a multiplier effect, helping create jobs not only in the original firm that owns the IP, but with all the firms that buy or sell from that company as well. For instance, it's not just about protecting the copyrights held by writers and publishers. It's also about the internet company that sells legitimate copyrighted books. It's not just about the new applications patented by a software company. It's also about the computer manufacturer that uses inputs made by semiconductor firms to make the hardware that's needed to run the applications made by that software company. All of this is about generating and preserving jobs for American business. But to be honest, we've never really had a good idea of how many jobs in America depend on intellectual property. So I'm going to give you a preview of coming attractions. In the next coming weeks, the Economics and Statistics Administration and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and the Department of Commerce are going to be releasing a new report, the first of its kind, that identifies the industries and the businesses that rely heavily on IP to be successful and that benefit the most from patents, trademarks, and copyrights. That report is going to show that these industries support tens of millions of jobs and contribute several trillion dollars to our gross domestic product. And I should note, because it's a government report and it's in the public domain, it will not be copyrighted, so you guys can use it in any way that you want. My bottom line this morning is that counterfeit goods are bad business. They hurt our economy, and they reduce the jobs available to American workers. Protecting our intellectual property is a crucial part of strengthening and growing the American economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blank. John Morton was unanimously confirmed as the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement by the U.S. Senate on May 12, 2009. Prior to his appointment by the President, Mr. Morton spent 15 years at the Department of Justice as an Assistant United States Attorney, Counsel to the Deputy Attorney General, and Acting Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the Criminal Division. During his tenure at ICE, Mr. Morton has strengthened ICE's investigative efforts with particular emphasis on intellectual property enforcement. His agency has been a true partner and contributor to the Department of Justice's efforts to confront intellectual property crime. Director Morton?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Why are we here today, besides the possibility of hearing Victoria and the Attorney General speak? Well, we're here because one of the very first powers of government we recognized in our Constitution nearly 224 years ago was, and I quote, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Not a statute, our Constitution. These were rights worthy of constitutional protection then, and they remain rights worthy of government protection today. A great country, such as ours, ultimately thrives on innovation, on dynamic industry, and on technological leaps. And if criminals can steal and divert the progress of science and the useful arts with ease, that innovation, that industry, those technological leaps that we depend on so dearly as a nation are lost. Fortunately, there is a vibrant coalition of government actors focused on intellectual property enforcement, and I am very happy to say that our collective efforts are at an all-time high. ICE, the agency I lead, is one of those actors. Most of the rest are in this room surrounding me right now. We at ICE are the principal federal investigator of intellectual property crimes, and we're the home of the National Intellectual Property Rights Center. And the IPR Center has truly become a national coordination center. We have over 19 members, 16 of them federal law enforcement agencies, and the other 3 are foreign governments. We have Canada, we have Mexico, and we have a collection of governments in the form of Interpol. This past year, ICE initiated over 1,200 criminal investigations, the highest number in our history as an agency. And working with our good friends at the Department of Justice, we set enforcement records for arrests, for indictments, and for convictions. For the first time, I think we can say that there is a very, very good prospect of serious criminal enforcement if you violate the intellectual property enforcement laws. In short, criminals are going to jail for intellectual property theft. And I'm very, very confident you will see similar levels of enforcement from both ICE and from the Department of Justice this coming year. Theft it is, as the Attorney General noted. We just concluded our 8th round of domain seizures yesterday under operation in our sites, and these are targeting internet sites engaged in counterfeiting and content theft. ICE began these seizures in June of 2010 with our first round with 9 sites. And yesterday, the Attorney General and I announced the seizure of 150 domain names, 109 by ICE and 41 by the FBI. And these sites are literally defrauding consumers, pretending to be authorized online retailers of genuine goods, but there's nothing genuine about them. One of my favorites was one we seized last year on Cyber Monday was realtimberland.com. And there was nothing real and nothing Timberland about that site or the goods that were being sold. They were all being manufactured in China and sent here, pretending to be the real thing. These online websites are simply criminal traps, selling counterfeit goods to the unwary. Everything from golf clubs to exercise equipment. We had P90X equipment that was counterfeit this last round. Boots, sunglasses, professional sports jerseys. Of course, we're here today because, as you all know and I know, enforcement is only part of the solution. It's a very important part, but it's only part of the solution. Public outreach and awareness is critical. We have to change the public perception of intellectual property and intellectual property enforcement if we're going to make a profound difference. And there are extremely exciting possibilities on the horizon. In fact, the horizon is right behind me, and you're going to see several of them in just a few minutes. And I'm very, very excited about it, because what we're trying to do is blend enforcement and public outreach, and to give you a sense of why I think the future is actually quite bright on this score, and why the glass is half full and not half empty. As I said, we're on our 8th round of seizing internet domain names from websites that are engaged in counterfeiting and online content theft. As most of the people know in this room, one of the things that we did was to start to put banners up on the websites that we forfeited through our activity with the Department of Justice. At last count, 77 million people have gone to see that banner. We've had 77 million hits. That is such a greater volume than the sites were generating when they were counterfeiting sites that it's not funny. And we've had this odd phenomenon where the sites, once seized by the government, have a much, much higher rate of traffic than when they were counterfeiting and pirate sites. And as sadly as you all know, that's saying something, because the traffic was considerable when they were engaged in criminal prosecution. And we've gone the next step of now, instead of just going to see a static banner, you go and you see a public service announcement. The very first one we worked out with the entertainment industry, a very well-done clip by NBC, 3 minutes, that brings home in very dramatic terms what intellectual property violations really mean to people who are working in that industry. And what you're going to see today is the next, much more sophisticated evolution of that basic concept. And I'm really excited about the prospects for all of us as we try to make this country the best place it can be for innovation and for technological advance. We wouldn't be here today if we didn't have some real leaders at the very front, and I want to recognize them personally. I've been in this business for quite some time, and there's never been a better alignment of the stars from an enforcement perspective, from a public policy perspective. The Attorney General has been very much at the forefront of these activities. He was that way when he was my boss as the Deputy Attorney General. He thought he got rid of me then, and here I popped up all these years later. Victoria's office and her work personally have just been tremendous, and I thank her for all of the efforts. And a big thank you to the people in this room. I see so many faces that are at all of the conferences and various meetings that we have. There are elements of an announcement like this that are preaching to the converted, and there is preaching to the converted, and I recognize that so many of the people in this room have done tremendous, tremendous work to advance the cause. We wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be able to be successful if it weren't for our partnerships with industry, with our partnerships with law enforcement officials, with people like Ann. So big thank you to all of you for your work and being here and supporting this cause. It's an important, it's a worthy cause. It's in our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least Ann Harkins is the president and CEO of the National Crime Prevention Council, which conducts public education training and technical assistance to help people keep themselves, their families, and their communities safe from crime. In 2010, BJA partnered with NCPC to produce the public education campaign we are launching today. Ann Harkins was a natural collaborator in this endeavor due to her extensive partnerships with both government and corporate entities, which she acquired throughout her work as Deputy Secretary or Deputy Sergeant at Arms at the U.S. Senate, Chief of Staff for Attorney General Janet Reno at the U.S. Department of Justice, and Chief Counsel to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Technology and the Law. I am very pleased to introduce Ann Harkins.
Thank you, Denise. Hello, everyone. All of us at the National Crime Prevention Council are proud and honored to be here today at the White House to launch a fabulous body of creative work. As Denise said, our mission at NCPC is to be the nation's leader in helping people keep themselves, their families, and their communities safe from crime. We are the home of McGruff the Crime Dog, our own very valuable piece of intellectual property. This campaign is the product of the partnership between NCPC, the Department of Justice, working closely with the White House, other federal agencies, state and local law enforcement, and the private sector. We would not be here today without the leadership and participation of everyone on the stage. Thank you all. And thank you, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Congressman John Conyers, and Congressman Adam Schiff for being with us today. All of these dedicated public servants have worked to combat IP theft throughout their very impressive careers. I would also like to recognize and thank everyone in the Public Education and Outreach Working Group of DOJ's IP Task Force. Special thanks to co-chairs Lori Robinson, who leads OJP with her deft hand, and Andrea Sharon from CSIPS in the Criminal Division. There are many other people to thank. The members of our media campaign advisory team, everyone at BJA, especially Pam Camerata and Kate McNamee, and America's IP industries, who contribute so much to our economy and our quality of life. We are very grateful that Bob Schultz and his staff at the Causeway Agency devoted their amazing skills and talents to this project. Thank you, Bob and Trewe. And thank you, Chris Mosner of Mosner & Associates, for your fine work on the focus groups and online survey research. I am proud to say this with two members of our NCPC board here, David Dean, our chair, and Bob Diegelman, our vice chair. David is here with a delegation from the North Texas Crime Commission and has brought with him some state and local law enforcement officials, Susan Reed from Bexar County, the DA, Harold Cullum, a businessman from Dallas, Steve Adams, Riverside, California City Councilman, and Vickers Cunningham, a former district judge in Dallas. All of this project is dependent on us working together with folks at every level of government all across the country. And there is no one to whom we owe more gratitude for this outstanding project than the National Crime Prevention Council's terrific staff. And I must make a special call out to Michelle Boykins, who's done a terrific job. We at NCPC do our homework, and the first step is research. On this project, the research helped us find out what our target audience, adults ages 18 to 30, already knew and thought about intellectual property, not enough, and what messages and messengers will resonate with different segments of that audience. The research tells us that theft of intellectual property is widespread. The public thinks the crime is victimless. The lure of the bargain overcomes the moral compass almost every time, and there is a marked lack of public awareness of the dangers and effects of IP theft. People do not realize or appreciate that some products they consume every day can be dangerous counterfeits, posing threats to their own and others' health and safety. That individual working people lose their jobs as a result of IP theft, and that gangs and organized international crime enterprises are often profiting from IP theft. Fortunately, the research also tells us that we have a window of opportunity to teach the public about IP theft and to reduce demand. People liken IP theft to robbery or shoplifting, which they know is wrong. They say they are not hearing enough information about intellectual property theft that would help them deter or change their behaviors. And large majorities believe they need more information but do not know where to get it. We're here to change that. Hats off to the wisdom of the Justice Department. They saw, as Director Morton said, that to get people to change their attitudes about intellectual property and deter those bargain hunting behaviors, we need to address the demand side of the equation through public awareness. Our research also shows us that the messages have to be personally relevant, firmly based in fact, and descriptive of the potential health and safety, economic, and moral consequences to the buyers and other people. Our goal with this campaign is to advance to a point where people understand the consequences of intellectual property theft, reconsider their behavior, and appreciate that just because a product may be cheap or even free, it may not be a bargain at all. As we share the work, let me point out that in today's information age, we must communicate our messages through a variety of media. Thus, educated by our research, we have developed product for radio, television, print, social media, the web, and malls. We want to speak to the public everywhere they are. We also learned that McGruff continues to be a strong messenger, especially on intellectual property-related health and safety issues. Finally, we concluded that we needed to develop and invoke a clear public call to action because the public wants to know more. We sound that call throughout the various messages and media. Our call to action is, counterfeits hurt. You have the power to stop them. This work speaks for itself, so let's get to it. The first piece that I want to share with you is premonition. We see that the everyday and apparently harmless act of buying a counterfeit DVD or other items from a street vendor can help fuel child labor, gangs, and result in innocent working people losing their jobs. Let's take a look.
Are these real?
The best quality.
You mean they're fake?
Only a few dollars.
Only a few dollars.
Only a few dollars. Only a few dollars.
Only a few dollars.
It's not only a few dollars. Counterfeit goods take away jobs, and many are tied to violence and crimes, including child labor, drugs, and gangs. You have the power to stop it. Know the real cost. Don't buy counterfeits.
For this ad, we have to say a special thank you and are delighted to say a special thank you to MTV Networks. Allison Williamson is here representing Chris Ernst, Audrey Singer, Matt Herron, and Patrick O'Sullivan. Great job. The next is a radio public service ad from Attorney General Eric Holder called You Can Help. In it, the Attorney General speaks to Americans about how street gangs and organized criminal enterprises are profiting from selling a range of counterfeit products to fund drug trafficking and other criminal activities. You can help.
This is Attorney General Eric Holder. We are working hard to protect our communities by reducing gang violence and organized crime, and there is an important and simple way that you can help. Some street gangs and organized crime groups are selling counterfeit products such as fake watches, DVDs, and purses as an easy way to make money, and they use that money to fund other crimes like trafficking in drugs and guns. When you buy knockoffs on the street or online, although it may not be obvious, you could be supporting gangs, putting money into their pockets, and helping them to engage in other illegal activities that put our communities at risk. We're asking all Americans, please don't buy fakes.
The next time you think about buying counterfeit products, consider the source. Remember, counterfeits hurt, but you have the power to stop them. To To learn more, go to www.ncpc.org/getreal. That's ncpc.org/getreal. A message from the National Crime Prevention Council and the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney General Holder, for adding your credible voice and important message to this effort. The next radio ad, called Everyday People, makes the same point, but with a different messenger. In this spot, we hear from a former gang member who turned his life around and is now a pastor. He knows firsthand how gangs use profits from selling counterfeit DVDs or other IP products as a funding source for their other activities.
Being a gang leader landed me in prison. But back in the day, you and me probably did business together. How? If you ever bought any counterfeit merchandise on the street, you know a fake purse, a bootleg DVD, a pair of sunglasses, there's a good chance you were putting money straight into my pocket. Because most times, it's gangs who illegally supply the knockoffs to street vendors. Those counterfeit products come from gangs and their overseas connections and are bought by everyday people just like you. So if you keep buying fakes, these gangs are going to keep on making easy money. Money they use for other activities. In other words, they're getting a lot of bang for their buck.
The next time you think about buying counterfeit products, consider the source. To learn more, go to www.ncpc.org/getreal. Remember, counterfeits hurt, but you have the power to stop them. A message from the National Crime Prevention Council and the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice.
One of the most frightening aspects of intellectual property theft is the danger that counterfeit products can pose to the health and safety of individuals and the public. Nowhere is this danger more troubling than when it involves otherwise legitimate-looking drugs and pharmaceuticals made of ingredients such as ground-up bricks and floor wax. We hear from a concerned couple in this radio ad, Dangerous Fakes, as they discuss the possibility of winding up in the emergency room if they are not careful about what drugs and medicines they buy and where they buy them.
My wife and I are spending more time on our computer. It's changing the way we live.
Mostly for the better.
Like paying our bills.
Or researching vacation spots.
But there can be a downside.
Right, like fake drugs being sold over the internet.
Because they look real and they seem like a great bargain.
And you can't always tell what's a fake.
Well, we learned the hard way.
At the emergency room.
Thousands of people are scammed into buying counterfeit drugs every day, thinking they're getting a deal. And rather than contain the active ingredient, they may contain dangerous elements like antifreeze, sawdust, or floor wax, resulting in potentially serious health risks. So never buy prescription or over-the-counter drugs online from unknown or unlicensed sources, as they are often dangerous fakes. Counterfeits hurt, but you have the power to stop them. To learn more, go to www.ncpc.org/getreal. Brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council and the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice.
Thanks. The ad on the screen behind me called Fakes, and the ad on the stage to my right called Last Pill educate the public to these dangers. Serious public health and safety dangers are posed by a wide range of other counterfeit products. These include electrical products, extension cords, holiday lights, batteries, products we ingest, like toothpaste and even baby formula, auto products we rely on every day, computer components, and even parts used in military equipment. The print ad to my left on the stage, called Burned, advises consumers to be careful to buy legitimate products or they may face serious risk, such as fire in their homes. IP theft has serious effects on jobs, companies, and the whole economy. This next radio ad is called Bargain Hunters. In it, a woman convinces her sister that a so-called bargain is not always what it appears to be.
My sister Katie and I love to shop.
Well, mostly window shop.
She means we're thorough.
She means we're bargain hunters.
Exactly.
But my sister Kelly showed me an article that made me change a really bad habit.
Just wanting us to do what's right.
You see, at one time, I just couldn't stay away from those bargain knockoffs. You know, the handbags and scarves sold on the street.
Counterfeit merchandise?
Ooh, you make it sound so illegal.
Well, it is stealing.
Ouch. I wouldn't steal. I didn't realize that this sort of stealing can lead to more Americans losing their jobs.
So, no more buying fakes and knockoffs, right?
Right. Just honest bargain hunting.
Now you're talking.
Remember, counterfeits hurt, but you have the power to stop them. To learn more, go to www.ncpc.org/getreal. That's ncpc.org/getreal. Brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice.
Thank you. The print ad on the screen behind me called Sneakers again taps into the idea that the so-called bargain is really a form of theft. It sends the message that the steal you think you are getting from buying cheap counterfeit products is just that, stealing. The last print ad to the lower left of the stage shows a seemingly stylish young woman wearing a variety of cheaply purchased counterfeit goods. It seeks to deter people from buying and wearing these products. Rather than looking fashionable, she looks like a thief and a phony, or as the ad calls her, a fashionista. We need to raise awareness about how personal behavior hurts real individual people, struggling young artists, behind-the-scenes blue-collar workers, and others in the entertainment industry. This radio spot, called Worth Buying, explains why we should pay for the quality products we enjoy.
In the past, when a musician or band recorded a song that was worth owning, people would buy it. And that inspired artists to create more music. It was a rewarding time for both artist and listener. Today, many music lovers refuse to pay anything to own a new song. Why pay for music when it can be downloaded illegally for free? When you download music illegally, you're stealing, and it's not a victimless crime. You're denying payment for work that rightfully belongs to the artist. So please, don't download music, movies, or software illegally. Do what's right. Pay for them. Get them legally and support aspiring artists who are busy creating your next favorite song.
Illegal downloads hurt, but you have the power to stop them. To learn more, go to www.ncpc.org/getreal. That's ncpc.org/getreal. Brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council and the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice.
Thanks. On the screen behind me is a print ad called Jobs Piracy, featuring a real person. Beverly is an electrician who was laid off from her job on a TV show because the production company was suffering large losses from theft of its intellectual property. She was unemployed for nearly 2 years before landing another job. We've all seen it in the subway and metro systems all over the world. The struggling young musician playing a guitar and singing with the case open for tips. But I don't think we've ever seen it quite the way the story is told in our final ad. It makes the point creatively and compellingly that intellectual property theft, illegally downloading music or software, for example, is stealing from people trying to make a living. It hurts people like this very real young woman playing and singing in the subway.
I got good sea legs from a year of trying to find my footing, and I'm missing my home even more than I should. You're as nice an idea as the ocean is blue, especially if you were true. So much destruction in your wake, I woke and watched you dreaming. So there are no mistakes and only variations on a theme. You can hide a child in the body of a man, and you can take more than you think you can. Forget all the lessons we learned, you should have been good to me. Forget all the lessons we learned, you should have been true. Forget all the lessons lessons we learned. You could have been good to me.
Music is Addie's life. She and artists like her deserve a chance to make a living from it. When you download music illegally, you're stealing from musicians, songwriters, and people like Addie, who are denied payment for work that is rightfully theirs. Do what's right. Don't download illegal copies of music, movies, or software. Get it legally. Illegal downloads are not victimless crimes. You have the power to stop them.
Wasn't that terrific? And Addie Brownlee, the singer, guitarist, songwriter, is here with us today. Addie, please stand up. And thank you. Thank you again to everyone who worked on this campaign and to all of you for coming today. Let me make a final plea to have you help us get the word out. Counterfeits hurt. You have the power to stop them. Thank you.
Thank you. An educated, well-informed American public is our most powerful weapon in preventing and reducing intellectual property crime. The campaign we have released today will provide our fellow citizens with the knowledge and resources they need to recognize its dangers and take positive steps to protect American innovation, public health, and safety. I offer my sincere thanks to our distinguished speakers for their support of these efforts and to all of you for joining us to celebrate this launch. Thank you.